Every night I saw her light on. And I knew I shouldn't look. But I did. Her silhouette moved behind the curtains, soft and deliberate, like she was dancing with secrets she'd never tell. I'd stand at my window, gripping the frame, my heart hammering so loud I swore she could hear it across the street. Her name was Elise, my neighbor, married to a man who didn't deserve her. I was 25, single, and drowning in a life I hadn't figured out yet. She was 34, elegant, with a laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. But she was his. And that made every glance, every fleeting moment, a theft I couldn't stop committing. It wasn't just her beauty, though she had that in spades, dark hair that fell in soft waves, eyes that held a story I wanted to read. It was the way she carried herself, like she was holding something fragile inside, something she didn't trust the world to see. I told myself I was just curious, just being neighborly. But deep down, I knew it was more. Every time I saw her, I felt this pull, this ache, like I was reaching for something I could never hold. It started innocently enough, or at least that's what I told myself. A wave from her porch as I mowed my lawn, sweat dripping down my back in the summer heat. A quick chat about the weather when we grabbed our mail, her fingers brushing the envelopes with a grace I couldn't stop noticing. But then there were the moments that weren't so innocent. The way her eyes lingered on me when she thought I wasn't looking, like she was trying to figure me out. The way her voice softened when she said my name, like it was a secret she was testing out, rolling it around in her mouth to see how it felt. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I wasn't supposed to want her. I'd always been the guy who played by the rules, who respected boundaries, who knew right from wrong. But the more I tried to pull away, the deeper I fell into this quiet, dangerous obsession. It was like she'd slipped under my skin, and I didn't know how to get her out. What's worse, loving someone you can't have or betraying everything you believe in? That question kept me up at night, staring at her window, wondering if she ever thought of me the way I thought of her. I wasn't a homewrecker. I wasn't the guy who crossed lines. But every time I saw her, I felt myself slipping, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't come back from. I'd lie awake, imagining her life, her mornings with Mark, her evenings alone, the way she might smile at him when he came home. Did she love him? Did she ever? Or was she as trapped as I felt, caught in a life that didn't fit anymore? I didn't have answers, but I couldn't stop asking the questions. This is the story of how I fell for Elise, my married neighbor, and how it changed me forever. It's not a love story, at least, not the kind you're thinking of. It's a story about longing, guilt, and the things we can't undo. And trust me, you're not ready for where this goes. I moved to Willow Street a year ago, fresh out of a dead-end job and a breakup that left me hollow. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people kept their lawns neat and their lives private. I rented a small house, nothing fancy, just a place to start over. The walls were bare, the furniture mismatched, but it was mine. I didn't know anyone, and I liked it that way. No expectations, no complications. Just me, my coffee, and the hum of a new beginning. I'd spend my mornings jogging through the neighborhood, the air crisp with the promise of something better. That's when I saw Elise for the first time, standing in her garden across the street, a watering can in her hand, her hair tied back in a loose bun. She was humming to herself, a faint smile on her face, like she was lost in a world of her own. She wore a simple sundress, pale blue, the kind that swayed with the breeze. There was something about her, something that made the air feel heavier, like the world slowed down just to watch her move. I was carrying boxes inside, my arms aching, when she looked up and waved. "New neighbor?" she called out, her voice warm but curious, like she was sizing me up. I nodded, managed a clumsy smile, and said something about the weather, something lame, like how it was too hot for September. She laughed, and it was like someone flipped a switch in my chest. It wasn't just a laugh, it was a sound that made me want to hear it again, to be the reason for it. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the start of everything. I went back to unpacking, but her face stayed with me, her smile burned into my mind like a photograph I couldn't stop looking at. Elise and her husband, Mark, lived in the house directly across from mine. It was a tidy two-story with a white picket fence, the kind of place you'd see in a magazine about perfect suburban lives. Mark was older, maybe early 40s, with a permanent scowl and a habit of leaving for work before dawn. I'd see him pull out in his sleek black car, always in a hurry, always distracted, his phone pressed to his ear before the engine even started. Elise, though, she was different. She'd linger on her porch, reading a book or sipping tea, her movements slow and deliberate, like she was waiting for something to happen. I'd catch myself watching her, not on purpose, just drawn to her. She had this quiet strength, but there was something else too. A sadness, maybe? A weight she carried that I couldn't quite place. It was in the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was looking, the way her smile faded when she turned back to her house. We started talking more over the weeks. Small things at first. Her recommending a local coffee shop with the best lattes, me asking about her garden, pretending I cared about roses when really I just wanted to hear her voice. She was easy to talk to, the kind of person who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. Her questions were thoughtful, her laughter genuine, and every conversation left me wanting more. But there was always this line we didn't cross. She was married. I knew that. I respected that. At least I tried to. But every time she smiled at me, every time her hand brushed mine when she handed me a spare tomato from her garden, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't just attraction. It was deeper, Messier. Like I was seeing parts of myself I didn't know existed, parts that wanted more than I'd ever let myself want before. Mark wasn't cruel, not that I could see. But he was distant. I'd hear him snap at her sometimes, his voice carrying through their open windows on quiet evenings. "Elise, can you just handle it?" he'd say, sharp and impatient, or, "I don't have time for this." She'd go quiet, and I'd feel this ache, like I wanted to fix it for her, to make her smile again. I told myself I was just being neighborly. Just being kind. But deep down, I knew it was more. I started finding excuses to be outside when she was. I'd check my mail 3 times a day, hoping she'd be at her mailbox. I'd mow my lawn when I knew she'd be gardening, the hum of the mower a week cover for the way my eyes kept drifting to her. And every time our eyes met, there was this unspoken thing between us. A pull. A question neither of us dared to ask. It was like we were circling something dangerous, both of us knowing it was there but pretending it wasn't. It was a Thursday evening, late summer, when everything changed. The air was thick with the smell of cut grass and impending rain. I was sitting on my porch, nursing a beer, the bottle sweating in my hand, when Elise walked over. She looked different, tired maybe, or something heavier. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, but she smiled when she saw me, a fragile smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, gesturing to the chair next to me. My heart did a flip, like I was a teenager with a crush. I nodded, trying to play it cool, but my hands were shaking as I offered her a drink. She declined, sitting down with a sigh that felt like it carried the weight of the world. She pulled her sweater tighter around her, even though the evening was warm, and I noticed the way her fingers fidgeted, like she was nervous. We talked for hours that night. Not about anything big, just life, dreams, the little things that make you who you are. She told me about her childhood, growing up in a small town where everyone knew each other's secrets. She talked about how she used to dream of being a painter, spending hours with a sketchbook, capturing the world in colors she could control. "I was good," she said, her voice soft but bitter. "But I gave it up when I married Mark. He's practical. He thinks dreams are for people who don't have responsibilities." There was a pause, and I could feel the weight of what she didn't say. I wanted to tell her she deserved more, that she deserved someone who saw her, really saw her, who would elderberry for her dreams. But I didn't. I just listened, letting her words fill the space between us, feeling like I was seeing her for the first time. That night became a pattern. She'd come over when Mark was working late, or when he was out of town for one of his endless business trips. We'd sit on my porch, or sometimes hers, talking until the stars came out, the air cooling around us. It was innocent, or at least we pretended it was. But there were moments, her hand lingering on mine when she passed me a glass of water, her leaning closer than she needed to when she laughed, that made my pulse race. I started living for those moments, replaying them in my head when I was alone, lying in bed with the windows open, the sound of crickets filling the silence. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was crossing a line, even if we never said it out loud. But I couldn't stop. It was like an addiction, the kind that feels good until it doesn't. One night she showed up at my door, her hair damp from the rain, her eyes wild with something I couldn't read. It was late, past midnight, and the street was quiet except for the soft patter of rain on the pavement. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like she was afraid of her own words. I should have said no. I should have sent her home. But I didn't. I stepped aside, and she walked in, her presence filling my small living room with a weight I couldn't name. We sat on my couch, closer than we'd ever been, the air thick with the smell of rain and something else, something unspoken. She told me Mark had been distant for years, that she felt like a ghost in her own marriage. "I don't know who I am anymore," she said, her voice breaking, her hands twisting in her lap. I wanted to hold her, to tell her she was enough, more than enough. But I didn't. I just sat there, my heart pounding, torn between what I wanted and what I knew was right. The rain kept falling outside, a steady rhythm that matched the chaos in my chest. The guilt started creeping in after that. Every time I saw her, I felt it, this gnawing sense that I was betraying something, even if nothing had happened. I'd lie awake at night, imagining what it would be like to kiss her, to hold her, to be the one she came home to. I'd picture her in her garden, her hands in the dirt, her face soft with focus. I'd imagine her laughing, her head tilted back, the sound filling the air. But then I'd see Mark's car in their driveway, its sleek black frame a reminder of the line I couldn't cross. She wasn't mine. She could never be mine. And yet I couldn't let her go. I started avoiding my own reflection, afraid of the person I'd see, the guy who was falling for someone else's wife. The tension built over weeks. Our conversations grew heavier, more loaded, like we were both tiptoeing around a truth we couldn't face. She'd talk about leaving Mark, about starting over, her voice full of hope and fear. "I could do it," she'd say, staring at her hands. "I could leave. But I made a vow. And what would people think?" I wanted to scream that it didn't matter, that she deserved to be happy, that we could figure it out together. But I didn't. I was too scared, scared of losing her, scared of what it would mean if we crossed that line. And then there were the moments when I caught her looking at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't name. Longing? Fear? Both? It was like we were both standing on the edge of a cliff, daring each other to jump, but neither of us moving. One night she invited me over for dinner. Mark was out of town, and she said she just wanted company. I knew it was a bad idea, but I went anyway, my heart racing as I crossed the street, the familiar path feeling like a tightrope. The air felt different that night, thicker, charged, like the world was holding its breath. We laughed over wine, the clink of glasses echoing in her quiet kitchen. Our knees brushed under the table, and I felt the heat of her skin through my jeans. She reached for my hand, her fingers warm and trembling, and I didn't pull away. For a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world, the rest of Willow Street fading into nothing. But then she pulled back, her face clouding over, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "We can't," she whispered. "This isn't right." I wanted to argue, to tell her it was right, that we were right, that nothing had ever felt more real. But the guilt in her eyes stopped me, a mirror to my own. I left her house that night, my heart in pieces, the rain starting again as I walked home, knowing we'd come too close to something we couldn't take back. After that night, things changed. Elise started pulling away, her presence fading like a song you can't quite remember. She'd still wave from her porch, but the conversation stopped. No more late-night talks, no more stolen glances that made my heart race. I felt like I was losing her, even though she was never mine to begin with. The silence was unbearable, a void where her voice used to be. I'd see her gardening, her hands moving with purpose, or walking to her car, her steps quick and distracted, and every time, I'd feel this ache, this need to fix things. But what was there to fix? Nothing had happened, not really. And yet, everything had. The neighborhood felt different now, the air heavier, the quiet louder. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the way Mark's car was gone more often, leaving early and returning late, the way Elise's light stayed on later and later, a beacon in the dark I couldn't reach. I tried to move on, to focus on my life, to fill my days with work and routine. But she was everywhere, in my thoughts, in my dreams, in the way the neighborhood felt emptier without her voice. I started questioning myself, replaying every moment we'd shared. Was I imagining the connection between us? Was I the only one who felt it, who woke up with her name on my lips? Or was she fighting the same battle I was, torn between what she wanted and what she knew was right? I didn't know, and the not knowing was worse than anything. I'd walk past her house, hoping for a glimpse of her, but the windows were dark, the curtains still. It was like she was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. One day, I saw her at the mailbox, her hair pulled back, her face pale under the morning sun. I couldn't help myself. I walked over, my heart pounding, and asked if she was okay. She looked at me, her eyes tired but soft, like she was carrying a weight she couldn't share. "I'm trying to be," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's complicated." I wanted to ask what she meant, to beg her to tell me everything, but she turned away before I could, her footsteps fading as she walked back to her house. That was the moment I realized how deep I was in. This wasn't just a crush. This was something that could ruin me, something that already had. Weeks passed, and the distance between us grew, a chasm I couldn't cross. But the longing didn't fade. If anything, it got worse, a constant ache that followed me everywhere. I'd find myself standing at my window, watching her house, wondering what she was doing, what she was feeling. I started writing letters I never sent, letters where I poured out everything I couldn't say. I told her how she made me feel alive, how she made me want to be better, how every moment with her felt like a gift I didn't deserve. I told her I'd wait for her, no matter how long it took, no matter how much it hurt. But I never gave her those letters. I couldn't. They were proof of my weakness, proof that I was falling for someone I could never have. I'd sit in my room, the pages crumpled in my hands, the words blurring as I fought back tears. Then came the night that broke me. It was late, maybe 2 a.m., when I saw her light flicker on. I was at my window, as usual, unable to sleep, the darkness pressing against me. She stepped onto her porch, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low but urgent. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see the way her shoulders shook, the way she paced like she was unraveling. Her hair was loose, catching the moonlight, and she looked so small, so fragile, like the weight of the world was crushing her. I wanted to go to her, to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I didn't. I just watched, like a coward, as she cried into the night, her sobs swallowed by the quiet. I stood there, frozen, my hands pressed against the glass, my heart screaming at me to move. But I didn't. I let her cry alone, and that choice haunts me still. The next morning, I saw Mark's car back in the driveway, its black frame gleaming in the sun. He was home, and Elise was nowhere to be seen. I felt this sick twist in my stomach, like I'd missed my chance, like I'd let her slip away. I started wondering if she told him about me, about us, even though there was no us. The guilt was suffocating now, a weight that pressed down on me every moment. I wasn't just betraying Mark, I was betraying myself, my values, everything I thought I stood for. But the worst part? I didn't care. Not enough to stop. I kept looking for her, kept hoping for one more moment, one more chance to feel that spark again. I started finding excuses to see her again. I'd knock on her door with some lame excuse, a borrowed tool, a question about the neighborhood watch schedule. She'd smile, but it was different now, guarded, like she was trying to protect herself from me, or maybe from herself. Her eyes didn't linger anymore, and her voice was careful, measured. One day, she invited me in for coffee, and I thought maybe things could go back to how they were, to those nights when the world felt small and ours. But the air was heavy, and every word felt like a risk, like we were both afraid of what might come out. We sat at her kitchen table, the mugs warm in our hands, the silence stretching between us. "I think about you," she said suddenly, her voice barely audible, her eyes fixed on the table. "More than I should." My heart stopped, the air gone from the room. I wanted to tell her I thought about her too, every second of every day, that she was the only thing that felt real anymore. But before I could, she stood up, her chair scraping against the floor, and said, "You should go." Her voice was firm, but her hands were shaking, and I knew she was fighting the same war I was. I never saw Elise again after that. A week later, I came home to find a moving truck in front of her house, its engine idling like a heartbeat. Mark was directing the movers, his face as cold as ever, his voice barking orders as boxes were loaded into the back. Elise was nowhere in sight, her absence a void that swallowed me whole. I stood on my porch, watching as her life was packed away, feeling like someone had ripped the air from my lungs. I don't know if she left him, or if they left together. I don't know if she ever thought of me the way I thought of her, if she ever lay awake at night with my name in her head. All I know is that she was gone, and I was left with nothing but the weight of what could have been. The street felt emptier, the air colder, the world quieter without her in it. I found a note in my mailbox a few days later. It was in her handwriting, simple and unsigned, just 2 words on a scrap of paper. "I'm sorry." That was it. 2 words that broke me all over again, that cut deeper than anything else could. I keep that note in my drawer, folded and worn from the times I've held it, a reminder of the line I almost crossed, the person I almost became. I still think about her every night, wondering if she's happy, if she's free, if she's painting again in some new place where the light is softer. But I'll never know. And maybe that's the worst part of all, the not knowing, the wondering, the endless loop of what-ifs that play in my head when the world is quiet. Love is messy. It's not always beautiful or pure or neatly tied up with a bow. Sometimes it's a quiet ache, a secret you carry alone, a weight that never quite lifts. I don't know if I'll ever love someone the way I loved Elise, but I know I'll never forget her. She was my neighbor, my almost, my never. And she haunts me every night, her silhouette still dancing behind my eyes, her laugh still echoing in the dark. Have you ever loved someone you couldn't have? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to know I'm not alone in this. If this story hit you hard, hit that like button and share it with someone who gets it, someone who knows what it's like to carry a love that can't be. And subscribe for more stories that dig into the messy, beautiful, painful truth of what it means to be human. You don't want to miss what's coming next.